Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my great privilege to appear before you this afternoon to humbly seek your confirmation to enable me answer the call of our President, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and offer my service to our beloved nation. I am from Abekuta, Ogun State. My mother was from the Majekodumi family of Ake. And on my father's side, I traced my lineage from the Honorable Wale Edun, who was secretary to the Egba United government under colonial rule. And he was a significant contributor to the development and the history of Abekuta. I had my early education at St. Paul's School, Ebute Meta in Lagos. And after that, I attended schools in London, UK, where my parents were then living, working, and studying. I obtained my bachelor's degree in economics from the University of London, Queen Mary College, and a master's degree in development economics from the University of Sussex, England, which included research at the well-regarded Institute of Development Studies. My career path has given me a strong background in investment banking, capital markets, economic policy formulation, and international development finance. After my youth service year, I began my professional life at Chase Merchant Bank in Lagos, which included training and exposure at Wall Street's Lehman Brothers and Chase Manhattan Bank's headquarters, both in New York. Thereafter, I took the opportunity to join the World Bank Group in Washington, D.C. through the highly competitive Young Professionals Program. I was an investment officer at IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, and then I became an economist at the World Bank. And in that role, I worked on macroeconomic policies and sector policies on Indonesia and India. Meanwhile, back home, entrepreneurial opportunities started unfolding, and I came back to Nigeria to take part in that process as a hands-on investor in a series of financial firms. And importantly, it was the government's liberalization of that sector that made it possible. I feel highly privileged to have worked with others to help build enduring legacies and strong institutions, including a leading independent investment bank, a ratings firm that is now a subsidiary of a global ratings agency, and a stock exchange quoted bank, among other successful companies. Likewise, in answering a call to service in Lagos State, I am proud to have been a part of the stunning success achieved under the inspirational leadership of the then Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in whose cabinet I served as Commissioner for Finance. Recall that Governor Tinubu took over in a most challenging time. He faced those challenges squarely and overcame them and was successful. And I played my own part in the design, the implementation, of innovative, homegrown, technology-driven solutions that increased the resources available to government, grew the revenue in large quantities, and thereby gave government the wherewithal to spend on infrastructure, social services, and of course, job creation. And there are parallels today. We all know that these are challenging economic times, and they also need to be confronted, to be wrestled with, and to be defeated in an effort to build a competitive economy. Aside from economics, may I say that I have engaged in youth empowerment. I am involved in the International Award for Young People Nigeria, which runs the Duke of Edinburgh's award. And having been a national amateur boxing champion during my student days, I hope you are not too surprised at that. I've taken great interest in working with the state boxing associations in Ogun State and Lagos State to channel the energies of young people in the right direction. Your Excellency, distinguished senators, let me conclude by saying, in my view, and I'm sure in the view of so many, Nigeria is too well blessed with resources, both human and natural, not to be successful. At the outset of this new administration, I am hugely optimistic that that success will come. On a personal note, success for me would be to retain a record of competence and integrity during my service. I am Adebayo Wale Edun, and I humbly seek your confirmation of my nomination so that I can join you in service of our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, let me thank so many of the senators that have spoken today for their kind words regarding my own acceptability and suitability. It places a heavy burden of responsibility, but it is a responsibility I will not shirk. It's a challenge I will not back down from. And it's, if given the opportunity, I will do my best to ensure that it is not wasted. Your Excellency, I would like to start where you ended. And I think consistency is very important. In the days when I was in public service at the sub-national level, I did, under our president, then Governor of Lagos, advocate that there should be a separation between the Accountant General of the Federation and the Accountant General of the federal government. I would like to reserve the right to review and reaffirm that the situation still remains what it was then, which led to that position being taken. However, I will say this. When we see the kind of difficulty that leads to reconciliation upon reconciliation and disagreement between the fiscal division of resources between the federals and the state, definitely there is need for more resources to ensure that the financial relationship between the federal and states and local governments is kept up to date and constitutional. Having said that, may I now go back to what was a plethora of questions regarding the economy. I do not want to take your time, your distinguished senators. Senator Abiru, my very good friend, had indicated that it would be useful to say where we are in terms of economic reform, given that Mr. President has been in office for 2 months, and in that period, I think you will agree with me, he has done a lot. But let me first of all summarize. Much has been said about what happened in Lagos regarding its economic and financial turnaround. In sum, there were 4 things. First of all, there was a commitment to technology. Technology was unsparingly and ruthlessly and robustly used to help increase revenue generation by blocking loopholes and increasing efficiency. Secondly, and in the same way, there was total computerizations of the operations of government. In effect, that was civil service reform by another name. Thirdly, there was reliance on the private sector and private investment to drive the economy. And fourth, there was efficient use of the financial markets. Lagos was put in a position financially in terms of its records where he could access the domestic financial markets for long-term financing. That, in a nutshell, what was done in Lagos, and clearly much of it is repeatable at the federal level. As regards the state of the economy, let us remember where we have come from. In 1990, the wealth, the income per capita, the GDP per capita of Nigeria was higher than that of China. As recently as 1990, today, Chinese per capita income is $13,000 nearly. Nigeria's is just over $2,000. So you can see the gap that has opened up. And the reason why was that production growth was stalled by insecurity, by inflation, and by wasteful government expenditure to a large extent. However, in the last 2 months, there really has been a turnaround in the Nigerian economy, which is room for tremendous optimism. The senator from Ogun, Otumba Gbenga Daniel, talked about debt. When you look at what has happened with revenue, it is like having a bucket with a hole in it and pouring water in it. The minute you block the hole, the revenue piles up. I'm sure your state governors will tell you that their fiscal situation has turned around, and same with the federal government. It's not quite a question of having so much money that is a question of how do we spend it. But I assure you, there will be a continuous improvement in the fiscal situation at the federal and the state level, and that takes care of the debt situation. Owing is not a bad thing, as long as you have the revenue to service. And it was and is the commitment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to curtail spending, to curtail inefficiencies, and also to stay within the law in terms of borrowing to finance government operations. The subsidy removal and the exchange rate elimination of multiple windows has left us in a very strong position to go forward. However, and it is the concern that Mr. President has been raising, in the time between the several months that it takes for the benefits of economic reform to come through, there is pain. There's substantial economic pain. And that's why the task of government and the commitment of President Tinubu is to ensure that the poorest, the weakest, and the most vulnerable in society are protected through that period. And distinguished senators, it is not just a job for the federal government. The states have their role to play. The corporate sector has its role to play. Individuals have their role to play. The economy has been turned around and put on a positive path by the bold and courageous monetary and fiscal measures of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And what remains is for us to do all we can to support this process so that we stay the course and move this country to the level of a prosperous nation, which is where it rightfully belongs and the people of Nigeria deserve to be. Thank you.
That we unanimously, our nominee, you see that everybody is waiting to ask questions, and so many hands are up, but we can't allow you to answer all the questions in one day, because after your confirmation, if by the Senate, we may need to invite you back so that we can have maybe closed session. So the minority leader, do you have anything you want to say? Please, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished senators, thank you very much. Senator Goje beat me to it. I was noting that that question on power was one that I had not addressed. And my response is this: there has been liberalization of the electricity sector, and it's done in order to allow investment in all aspects of the value chain. And I think it is that liberalization that will unleash investment in the sector, expertise in the sector, and decentralization of the once very, very monolithic, I would say, the once very monolithic power sector. So His Excellency beat me to it, but I was going to come back and reply you that we should look to the new dispensation in the electricity sector to bring the solutions that we seek. May I try and maybe respect a protocol by moving to the question of His Excellency, the former President of the Senate, who talked very, very emotionally, I might even say, about this issue of giving direct payments to poor people. Distinguished Senator, India would achieve what we are trying to achieve and what is giving us so much difficulty in a jiffy. A digital identity for virtually every man, woman, and child in India is what they have achieved, is what is recommended for us. It is what the telecoms companies that have visited Mr. President have promised to assist him with. I Senator Abiru had mentioned that I am a member of the party right from the grassroots, and have been so for decades. On that basis, I am loath to talk about the $800 million $800 million World Bank loan. It has proved so unpopular, has been spoken of in such derogatory terms that I think is not something that I would like to bring up or comment on at this stage, other than to say it's probably important to find a way not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And Senator Lawan, I know that the provision and the conditions surrounding that financing by the World Bank is that every recipient should have a biometric verification. Otherwise, they would not be eligible for that funding. So it's a catch-22. Clearly, there's a register that does have biometric validation to an extent. But as you say, sir, we need to do more to reach people outside of the formal financial system, and that, I'm sure, is a goal of this government. On the 500 billion naira supplementary budget, I think that is an appropriated sum. It was an appropriated sum, and therefore it was part of the current budget. Foreign exchange, Senator from Plateau. The issue of foreign exchange is clearly uppermost in the minds of the monetary authorities. What I can say is this: for a country that has revenue flows from oil revenues, from remittances, from other non-oil exports, and from financing of over $100 billion a year, there is no reason that there should not be a stable exchange rate, all other things being equal, and provided inflation is kept under control. The 860 or so that we are seeing is not backed up by the fundamentals of the Nigerian economy. The rate, when you move aside speculation and the fact that there is, as a result of the foreign exchange management practices of the past, the inefficiencies and the corruption involved, has meant that there is an overhang. There is an overhang of unpaid dollar bills, and that is what is putting pressure on the exchange rate, and that is what night and day the monetary authorities and the monetary team of Mr. President is looking to resolve by raising revenue, by looking at other sources of investment funding, by attracting investment funds, equity funds, not debt, from those around the world interested in investing in the Nigerian economy. Let us remember, it is not quite 2 weeks that Turkey, that is by no means a darling of the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF, and so forth, in terms of its monetary policies and its economic management. Turkey attracted $50 billion in investment funding of projects in that country from UAE. It is in such directions that the solution to the overhang, to the shortage of liquidity in the foreign exchange market is being sought. The whole gamut, including increases in oil production as a result of greater security. It is difficult to predict because the markets, the capital markets, take on a psychology of their own. But I would just like to warn that all the models are showing that the fundamental value of the Naira should be somewhere around 700. So therefore, a note of caution to the speculators. As liquidity flows in and the rate comes rapidly down, there's a chance that they could lose their shirts. It's just a warning. Your Excellency, you did raise the issue of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. You did raise the issue of adherence to the Constitution. His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a Democrat. He's someone that believes in federalism. He believes in true fiscal federalism. He believes in the rule of law. And so it is my belief that he would not countenance or knowingly spend or authorize to be spent funds that have not been duly appropriated by this august body and others who are so authorized to do. Thank you.
Mike. I can imagine that you can't wait to go. Think about. Thank you.